let's talk about that episode. Before we get started, as always, spoiler alert for episode 3 of WandaVision. If you haven't watched it yet, please go do that and then come back to watch this video because I'm going to be discussing that today. Now, episode 3 just came out today, so I'm not going to have as many talking points exactly as I did for the last episode where I talked about episode 1 and 2, which you can watch right there if you would like to. So much happened in 25 minutes, and a lot of it threw me for a loop, and I'm still processing a lot of what we saw and what happened, so I'm just gonna kind of talk through the episode and just talk about things that I noticed, things that kind of struck me as weird, and stuff like that. First off, we love a little casual sexism in our TV shows, don't we? We love that. No, but seriously, this episode was super fun. I think they did a great job with the kind of over-the-top 70s acting. The set was amazing, which, if I understand correctly, they based it off of like the Brady Bunch, and the opening credits were based off of a bunch of different shows from the 70s like the Brady Bunch. So it was really cool to see how they kind of changed the set a little bit to fit more of the 70s aesthetic. The first thing that really kind of stood out to me was when Herb was trimming the hedges and then he kind of started cutting into the wall, and Vision was like, dude, you good? Are you like aware that you're cutting into the wall? And he was like, oh, yeah, I guess I am. And then he just like kept cutting it. I don't know, it felt weird to me. I'm not sure if that was meant to allude to someone else trying to break into this reality, or if it was just kind of a funny little gag. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I just thought it was really weird, and it really caught my attention as something that was not normal. The next thing that I really thought a lot about was when Vision quoted William Shakespeare after he said that he wanted to name their kid Billy, short for William Shakespeare. The quote he said were, all the world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players. I was like, okay, so everyone in Westview is just kind of like players in this reality that either Wanda has created or that has been created for Wanda. Interesting. I thought that was kind of extremely obvious. There was like very little like stealthiness to that reference at all. I was like, okay, that's kind of obvious. I also thought it was an interesting callback to have how Wanda's emotions and feelings kind of influence her powers. We saw that in Age of Ultron when Pietro died. Her powers kind of went berserk. And so we saw the same thing with her Braxton Hicks contractions and then her actual contractions. So I thought that was a really cool callback to that. And I think it was a good reminder for us, the viewers, that, Wanda does have powers. Sometimes she can't control them, which she mentions in the episode, like, oh, I didn't mean for that to happen. So I feel like that was also kind of like to remind us that Wanda has these crazy, ridiculous powers. Even if we aren't seeing them at the kind of caliber that we're used to, she still very much has them, and they're still very much a part of her, and it affects her and her life. I also found it interesting how they decided to, like, for lack of a better term, rewind the reality in this episode, because in the second episode we actually saw the footage like rewind to go back to before Wanda saw the beekeeper, but in this episode it was literally just like a cut back to what Vision had been saying before he was talking about just how weird things are in Westview. And I'm sure that has to do with it going from the 60s to the 70s, but I also have noticed that this only happens like with Wanda. Like, people that are around Wanda are the ones that seem to kind of realize that something is like not quite right, but anytime that it gets brought up, something happens. So I do think that that is something that Wanda is actively doing. I think that she is the one that is stopping any kind of conversation about what's actually happening in this reality. So I think that's definitely something that we need to keep in mind throughout the rest of the episodes as the season unfolds. The commercial came pretty early in this episode. Then again, this was an actual pretty short episode to begin with. It was only 25 minutes. Last week, both of the episodes were over half an hour. But they're doubling down on Hydra. Again, if you notice, this one was called the Hydra Soak Bath Salts or whatever. And the Strucker Watch last week was also Hydra. The company was Hail Hydra. So I'm not sure if Hydra has anything to do with it, or like the common theory is these are just important events that kind of happened to Wanda, and so this is kind of like her coping with and coming to terms with the different things that have happened to her. But I thought it was interesting that this is now the second Hydra commercial that we've seen in the show, and it makes me wonder if we're going to see any more as the season progresses. I'd also like to take this moment just to say that this show makes me laugh, and I love that. I don't want to say that the MCU has never really been funny, because Guardians of the Galaxy, both of those movies are funny. Thor Ragnarok was funny, and the movies have like funny moments. But this is the first time that I've ever been like watching a Marvel show or a piece of media for Marvel and been like, wow, this is funny. And I like that. I appreciate when the shows and the movies are serious and everything, but I do like that they can be a little fun and silly too. Vision absolutely cracks me up in this show so much, and I'm not that big a fan of the character Vision, so I think that's really saying something that almost every time he opens his mouth, I'm laughing. Anyways, back to the actual plot of the show and whatnot. I thought it was interesting that the doctor's car conveniently crapped out so that he would be there for Wanda going into labor. I'm wondering if that also wasn't a kind of subconscious thing that Wanda did as well, or even if it's not Wanda, whoever is like created this reality for Wanda, if that wasn't like intentional so that the doctor would actually be there to deliver the babies. Also thought it was strange that the guy just kind of like went with Vision's powers. Like, he was kind of like weirded out about it, but I mean, he wasn't like, whoa, hold the phone, stop the presses. That was weird. He was just kind of like, huh, that happened. So that was interesting. I thought that was weird. The doctor also had a very weird line at the end, like after the birth and everything, which that whole scene was just funny. It was amazing. Again, with the over-the-top 70s acting, it was just really, it was funny. I enjoyed it. The whole process, like watching her go from like the Braxton Hicks contractions to full-on having the baby on the living room floor. It was just like, it all happened so fast, but it happened in such a comedic way that I really admire. And I hope we have funny moments like that in the rest of the show, although I feel like we're kind of, based on the end of this episode, I feel like we're kind of going into something a little bit more darker, but I'll discuss that a little bit more at the end of this discussion. But the doctor mentioned about how he probably wasn't going to go on vacation because it was hard to escape. Further proof that this is just a reality that has been created and it's artificial. Agnes was not in this episode as much as I thought she would be. We actually spent like most of the episode was in just Wanda and Vision's house, which I thought was an interesting choice, but it worked for kind of the plot of the episode. But Agnes, there's something up with Agnes. I don't know what it is. I can't tell if she's legitimately supposed to be like a bad guy or if she's just kind of stuck in this reality with everyone else. I know we've seen that one clip of her from one of the trailers where Vision like goes up to her in the car and she's like, "Are you dead too?" So like something is up with Agnes. I don't know what it is, and I'm not smart enough to come up with any like actual theories other than that she's most likely Agatha Harkness, which is becoming increasingly more and more likely, but something's up with her. I don't know what it is, and I haven't decided if I like it or not, but something is going on with Agnes. Also, she brought up Ralph again, and we still have not seen Ralph at all in the show. So, is Ralph even real? Is Ralph just what she calls Mephisto, like a lot of people are theorizing? I don't know. What do you think? Leave your thoughts down below, because I honestly have no idea what to think about Agnes or Ralph. I thought it was interesting that they put a lot of emphasis on Geraldine in this episode. She did just kind of like show up out of nowhere in the second episode. So, and I thought it was interesting that they waited until this episode to be like, we've never seen her before. She doesn't really have anywhere to be in this reality. Something's off about her. But like once they started like mentioning that stuff, I was like, that is kind of weird. And I guess they would notice if someone just kind of like showed up out of nowhere and was like suddenly part of this play or reality or whatever it is you want to call it. So I don't know. I don't think Geraldine is meant to be bad in any capacity, because she's Monica Rambeau, as we see at the end of this episode when she's kind of yeeted back to actual MCU reality. So I don't think she's supposed to be a bad guy at all. I just think that they think she's not supposed to be there, and that means that she's bad. And clearly we kind of get the same feeling from Wanda, because Wanda does not seem to like her at all once she kind of mentions Pietro and Aldron, which is something that I was not expecting at all. And I'm gonna be honest, I forgot Wanda had a twin. It wasn't until she mentioned Pietro that I was like, oh yeah, she is a twin herself. Oops. But I thought it was interesting that they brought up Aldron. Not because I didn't think that they wouldn't. I just wasn't expecting it. At least not in this capacity, and certainly not this early in the episode. So I think that also might be kind of a hint that this is a reality that Wanda has kind of created, maybe to deal with her past traumas, or just to kind of escape from her actual reality, which is made obvious by the end of the episode, which I thought they did a really cool job of changing the dimensions from the 4:3 like standard television ratio to the 16:9 ratio that we're used to now. That transition was really cool, and it was really like smooth, and I think it was a great way to kind of transition from what we know in like the context of the show, like WandaVision the show, and then expanding it out into like the MCU reality. So I thought that was interesting, and I think given that we've now seen that Westview is an actual like city, and it looks like Wanda has kind of taken it over, I do think that kind of solidifies the theory that this might be something that either Wanda herself has done or someone has done for Wanda, and is kind of keeping her and everyone in the city of Westview trapped, which would make sense, and it would explain why everyone seems to be kind of confused, and they don't know who she is, and she doesn't know who they are. And I think it was a twist that was kind of expected, but it's interesting the way that they had it play out, and I'm interested to see where we go in the next episode, because like I said earlier, I feel like all these episodes so far have been kind of lighthearted and cutesy and fun, but the weird like standoffish way Wanda was acting at the end of the episode, and then that transition from that to the MCU reality, I think is just, I think we're going to see it get kind of a little bit more darker and mysterious from here on out. Not that it hasn't been before, but like especially now, I feel like we're going to see less of that kind of comedic side, and we're going to see more of this, what is actually happening, what has happened to Wanda, what is going on with Westview. So yeah, that's just my initial thoughts on episode 3 of WandaVision. I've only watched it 2 times. I'm sure I might come up with some stuff that I notice or that kind of make me think a little bit more as I watch the episode more and more. If I think of anything else or if I see anything else, I will definitely mention it at the beginning of my video next Friday for episode 4. But I think that about wraps up this discussion this week for episode 3. If you have any theories, anything that you noticed that I didn't point out, or anything that you would like to talk to me about WandaVision, about this episode or the previous episodes that I talked about in a previous video, leave a comment down below. I would love to talk with you all about Marvel and about WandaVision. If you don't follow me already, go ahead and give me a subscribe. Click the notifications if you want to. I can't make you do that. And I will see you all on Wednesday if you're here and you actually watch my channel, or if you're just here for the Marvel videos, I will see you on Friday. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye!